And now you can call it a churn, you can call it a paradigm shift, you can use even stronger words. But I think something very fundamental is shifting in the world order. And what is shifting is that the United States, which has been for the last 80 years the most powerful country and the biggest economy, and something much more than that. A country which in many ways underwrote global rules and practices, which fashioned many of the organizations and understandings. If the United States starts to change its terms of dealing with the world, its approach to dealing with the world, it's almost, it's not almost, it is actually the foundation of the order which is shifting. Now, I use the term churn myself, so I compliment your team for picking.
We take it from you.
For this, because the word churn kind of signifies that you're going deep down.
Yes.
That it's not something on a surface. Exactly. It's not something which is going to come, go, and we'll carry on. I think the world will never be the same again.
Exactly.
So there is something very deep, very profound, very consequential which is happening right now. And yes, again, I think there are many other events and trends which have fed into it. You referred to the conflict, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I would still argue that the shift in the American position is a much more fundamental happening than the conflict, than the Russia-Ukraine conflict, however serious that is. There is another trend which precedes that, which is, I would say, the rise of China, because in many ways, I think that has driven or fed into the shift in American attitudes.
Yes.
There is a renewed, sharper sense of geopolitics. I think the changed American view of globalization has a lot to do with the rise of China. Not just the rise of China. I think you can see that in a way, between US and the world and between the West and the non-West, there has also been a shift in terms of balances and relative weight. So in some ways, we in India have also contributed to the dynamism of this evolution. And so have a lot of other countries. I mean, if you look at the 20 biggest economies, clearly these are very different from what they were 20 years ago, even more so than what they were 30, 40 years ago. So you had, the way I would describe it is, there's a series of trend lines. Then there are certain sharp events. COVID is an event. Russia-Ukraine conflict is an event. What's happening in the Middle East is an event. I would put, this rebalancing, the fact that you have the relative weight of economies are shifting, and with it the relative weight of the political influences. Technology is also both a trend and, in a way, and it's not an event, but it's a, there is a sharpness about some of it, particularly the AI bit. So you have trends, you have events, but most important, you have the foundation of the global order actually at some point saying, guess what, I've had enough of the order which I myself helped to invent, and now I think I'm going to set about it in a very different way.
And what does that mean for Asia? Asia is big, it's growing in terms of its weight and heft in the global scheme of things. This is where wealth is being generated, new wealth is being generated. But there is also diversity and divisiveness within the diversity that is Asia. And you mentioned China's rise, I think, is certainly part of that challenge. But looking at the Asian continent overall, what does this mean, that churn of the foundation of geopolitics for Asia? How is Asia going to evolve?
Well, I know you call the Asia society, but that doesn't mean all of Asia has a similar position. I think within Asia, there are actually a very, very diverse, very complex set of reactions. I think different countries would, each one, I mean exactly your starting point. You know, those in Asia who are treaty allies will look at it differently. Those who have what they perceive to be very sharp competitive edges to the relationship with US will look at it differently. Those who believe that, well, maybe in all these changes, there are opportunities lurking out there, which if you can exploit it intelligently, may offer you possibilities, will look at it differently. I think some of the, energy producers in the Gulf may look at it very differently. So I would say, really, it's a very bespoke answer you're looking for. I think everybody would really be kind of coming at it very, very differently. And we, in a way, we have all of the above. I mean, there would be each part, not just of Asia, but each part of the world would be gauging this foundational shift from its particular relationship to the foundation and to the larger environment, and calculating, saying, you know, what are the challenges and opportunities, what are the costs and benefits, what are the risks and possibilities in this. So I think the diversity of Asia does not allow me to give you a single uniform answer. Clearly there will be, you know, strategic, I would say, in a sense, security shifts. Clearly there will be technology, interplays out there. In many ways, a lot of what is driving the shift will also impact some parts of Asia. I mean, we are looking today at more industrial policy, at tariff wars, if you would, tariff impositions at least. You are looking at much stronger export controls. So it's not just the foundation which is shifting. That shifting foundation has a worldview which is significantly different from the earlier foundation on which some parts of Asia particularly profited enormously and may now no longer do so.
And in this mix, I think India is looked upon as having had a very agile, pragmatic approach to this churn.
Thank you very much.
Minister, you were there at the inauguration of President Trump to lay the foundation for what turned out to be a very successful visit by the Prime Minister to Washington, and came out with a statement. Just looking at the outcome, it's so substantive. It just touches so many aspects of this growing bilateral relationship between the United States and India, including now cooperation in the defense sector, and agreement to work towards a trade, not a free trade agreement, but a trade agreement nonetheless. I understand that the U.S. delegation is here to kickstart that negotiation. So I remember that moment many years ago when the RCEP was being finalized, and the summit meetings that gathered to finalize this and signed on to it. And Prime Minister Modi was the one who could not sign on to it.
Correct.
And that was a disappointment for the group. But I think from the Prime Minister's point of view, you understood the difficulties of signing on to that at that particular moment. But since then, there has been many bilateral trade agreements worked out, and now you're working towards one with the United States. How do you see this unfolding, and does this mean a fundamental shift in India's trade policy toward openness rather than the traditional, protect my industry kind of a position?
Let me, for the sake of clarity, separate the questions into two parts. One was going to Washington and what did we agree on, and the other part, the trade set of issues. when we went to Washington in February, when Prime Minister went, and the discussions that he had with President Trump, I think overall our assessment was that we saw many changes which were, which suited us, or which in some ways formed a convergence on which we could build upon. Let me give you a few examples. Let's take defense. We saw a president who was much more open and much more active in terms of building a security defense partnership, and much more forthcoming about American technology possibilities. Our own experience in the first term, in his first term, was that he personally took an interest in ensuring that some of the platforms which we had an interest in, which we wanted, which were sort of meandering their way somewhere through American bureaucracy, that he stepped in and made sure that this happened. This time around, we certainly heard a recognition that there has to be a better way of engaging partners. If there are countries who respect and recognize the value of American technology and want to acquire it, and there should be easier pathways than the current one. So we certainly expect a more substantial level, higher quality defense relationship as a result. A second area of interest for us was energy. For a country like India, whose imports are overwhelming, how to make sure that there's a stable, reasonable, predictable energy environment is something which is crucial for our long-term growth and development. Now, we saw a president who clearly had an interest in ensuring that energy availability was more, energy flows were more diverse, that countries like India could have more choice than we currently do. We, had some decades ago about a decade ago, started importing LNG from the U.S. For various reasons, the business stayed at a certain level. We have interest in increasing it because, the U.S. is a very, very stable supplier.
Yes.
So we found from the energy perspective a very positive administration. I would also say we had a good discussion on the tech world. I think there was a recognition that because, big tech is today, the success of big tech is essential to make America great again. There is a connection between the two. And I think big tech recognizes the importance of mobility and talent flows, and the importance of partnerships, because obviously everything in the tech world can't happen in America. So how do you create reliable supply chains? How do you have trusted vendors, trusted partners, transparent partners? I think these were issues on which again we saw a great deal of understanding and positivity. On trade, we had a very open discussion. And the result of that discussion was that the Prime Minister and the President agreed that we would conclude, you rightly said, not a free trade agreement, but a bilateral trade agreement by fall this year. And that is what is currently under discussion. We have a team here, by the way, they're not it's not that they are kicking off the discussion. My colleague, the Trade Minister, the Commerce Minister was in the U.S. last month. And since then, actually, we've been working the trade account through through virtual means. So there's a very active and intense trade discussion going on at this point of time. So this brings me to the trade part of what you asked. Look, we did not sign RCEP for this reason. Through the RCEP discussions, we continuously sought protections and safeguards because we had apprehensions about a surge of imports, essentially spurred by non-market and subsidy support. We didn't get it. The RCEP partners did not take our concerns seriously, and at the end of the day, finally, forgive my saying it, presented us with a take it or leave it situation, and we left it. And I think today, if you ask people, at that time when we did it, perhaps opinions were a bit more divided. Today, I think there's a much stronger consensus that not joining RCEP for a country like India was a wise decision because, see, the nature of RCEP is a supply chain architectured system where rules of origin have very limited meaning. I mean, they can't be verified in the way in which it used to be before. So the way the flows would come at us, already we are today struggling with some very serious adverse trade balances. There are deep concerns in this country about the hollowing out of our industrial capacity. We believe that we are getting, again, a lot of unfair competition out of economies east of India. For sake of diplomacy, I will not take names. I think all these were factors into our thinking.